Hi everyone. So today I'm going to talk about our switches and our plugs. So just the basic electrics around the house. I'm going to look at the fuse board, the circuit breakers, the trip switches, however you want to refer to them. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at them and then we're going to work out how best to label them so we can actually know what we're doing every time we come to unscrew a light switch or a plug. First of all, if you are not comfortable doing this, then please seek the assistance of a professional. Get an electrician to come do it all for you. But if you're a competent DIYer, then this is really quite straightforward. If you want to change the faceplate, as we've done here, so from the basic white ones that come as standard, if we change it for a metal one, then you just need to take it off, you need to disconnect it and you need to put a new one on, but you need to make sure the electricity is disconnected. So normally what you would do is you would run off to the fuse board, we'll call it, and you'd flick one of the switches off and you'd come back and you'd see if the light is switched on or is gone off and it's the right one. If it's not, then you'd go back, you'd put that one back on again and you'd go back again and you'd trip off a different one. And then as soon as you come back, you'd have a look at the light, see if it's gone. Now you keep on doing that until you're sure that the light is no longer working. So you can do that, you can look at the light and there's nothing coming off from the light. So that's the way that you would check to make sure you've got the right light switch. But if you've got lots of light switches and you're doing lots of work and you change lots of faceplates, there's a lot of running back and forward. And believe me, I've done it. Just like everyone else, you go back and you go forward to try and do that. Now, there's an easier way, a much easier way of doing this. Now, it's a little bit of work up front, but it makes it so much easier going forward. Every time you want to touch a light switch or you want to touch a plug and you want to change the cover or anything like that, a much easier way is to go and label each one individually. Before you start, it's important that you mark the fuse board itself. So get yourself a good permanent marker pen and then go to the fuse board and then go across, and I do it from left to right because it's easy to read, and just mark each of the trip switches 1, 2, 3, 4, and just keep on going until you get to the end and make sure that it's a permanent marker and it can't wipe off, okay? So we're not going to use this on the switches, we're going to use something a bit more discreet, but we need to make sure that this is what we have on the fuse board to start with. Now to go and label each one individually, it is a bit of work. Don't get me wrong, it's a little bit of work to start with, but at least you're only going to do this once rather than every single time you need to do something on a switch. Sometimes you want to make sure that the light fitting's connected, you want to change bulbs, you want to do different things, and usually changing a bulb you don't need to turn the power off, but you want to make sure it's not going to suddenly jump on and turn the light on unexpectedly. So it's a little bit safer to make sure it's actually switched off. So what you need to do first of all is you need to go around, you need to get every single light switch and refer back to every single trip switch that relates to. Now it could be as simple as one of those trip switches covers all of your lights, or you may have one trip switch covers your lights upstairs and one covers the downstairs if you've got 2 floors in your house. Now, if you've got 3 floors, it could be 3 switches. But you could have different switches. I mean, like us, we've probably got 2 or 3 switches upstairs and we've got 2 or 3 switches downstairs. Now, we have a lot of trip switches in our fuse board here. You may only have, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got over 20 here, which is probably quite high, but it's a good reason why I want to label them all up so I don't have to do this over and over again. So if, like us, you've got lots of switches, we've got a switch here, there's a switch behind me, so there's 6 switches just, in this area where I'm standing here. But you might also want to know what they all do. This one does the downstairs light, this one does the upstairs light on the landing, this one does the porch light just outside the front door. And then just behind me, there's 3 switches and it does the inner hallway, does the other hallway downstairs, and then the third one does the driveway light. Now, it's not always obvious which ones are which. So the other thing I'm going to do at the same time is I'm actually going to label the switches so I know what each one does. Now, I want to do it nice and discreetly. My wife has gone to such great extents to, personalise the home, she's decorating, and she's done a fantastic job in the house. I don't want to spoil that by putting big markers all over the light, so I want to be as discreet as possible, but I just want to put some markings on there just so I know nice and easily what each switch is, you know, you'll get used to it after a while, but then you'll have visitors as well, you know, or family come over occasionally, and you know, they may not realise, and they may turn the porch light on, don't see what happens, and just leave it on all night without realising. So it's a, you know, good idea just to label them up if you've got a lot of switches as well, if it's not completely obvious. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a label on here for which circuits are connected to these switches. So there's 3 switches here, and as I said, one is the porch, one is the downstairs light, and one is the upstairs light. But it turns out they're actually on 2 circuits. So the porch and the downstairs light, they're on circuit 25, and then the upstairs light is on circuit 22. So if I want to make this completely safe, I need to actually trip off 2 switches and make sure the 25 and 22 are tripped before I take the cover off, to make sure none of these wires are live. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a labeler. I've got a Brother labeler. It's quite handy, really easy to use. Just punch in the details in there and out pops the label. The other thing I'm going to do though is, rather than using the white tape that comes with it, I'm going to use clear tape. So it's literally just a cartridge, and it's nice and simple to change. All I need to do is pop the back off, take out the old cartridge, which is the white one, and just put that to one side, and then get the clear cartridge and put that back in, put the cover on, and that's now ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the label machine now, and I'm going to put in here 25, and then 25, and then put a symbol in between, just a backslash, just so I can separate them, and then 22. And then I'm just going to print that one off. That's just going to pop out the top for me. And as soon as that's done, just cut that off. I will just grab a pair of scissors and give this a bit of a trim. So I've got a pair of scissors handy, and I'll trim that off. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is just simply peel the back off, and then you can see that it's a nice, discreet, clear label with the writing on the back and a quite small symbol, so I can literally just pop that into the corner nice and carefully, put that on there, and now I know that that's 25, 25 and 22, so 25, 25 and 22 in the same order. If I want to cut that off, I can just go and flick those switches. Really, really simple. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label the switches themselves. So I know, and anyone else that comes and visits also knows, that the first one is the porch, the middle one is the downstairs, and then the end one is the upstairs light. So if I just put that into the label machine, P-O-R-C-H, print that, and then I'll put that label on. And then as soon as that label's on, I will then put the other 2 labels on, so it's all clearly marked. Now the next thing to do when you've done all the light switches is to do all the plug sockets. Now they're just as important. Now you don't need to label them, because obviously a plug socket is a plug socket. It doesn't relate to any of the light switches, so don't need to label from that point of view. But to label the circuits is just as important, because if you're taking a faceplate off and you're changing a white plastic faceplate for a metal faceplate, you want to make sure that the electricity is cut off and switched off. Now I've already done this one, so at the bottom here you can see that this is on circuit 16, and I've gone around and I've tested it. Now you can test it a couple of different ways when you're doing it. You can get you know, a radio that's plugged in, you can get a little lamp, and you can go from plug to plug. You can use a vacuum cleaner, whatever you like. But what I found easier is just a little socket tester. It's made for the job, and it's literally just a plug sized socket tester, and it goes in there, and then when you switch it on, you just get the 3 lights that come on to say that that socket is live. I like this particular one. It's less than £10, nice and cheap. Get it off of Amazon, because you have all 3 lights when it's correct. So if you are wiring in a new plug socket and you're putting in the metal one instead of the plastic one, 3 lights on means everything's good. But do check if you're using a different one, because sometimes 2 lights on and 1 light off is actually correct. But I like this one because it's nice and easy to use. So I've gone around and I've done all the sockets and labelled those as well. So then all I need to do now is to think about whether I want to label the actual fuse board itself. So as you can see, for us, our fuse boards are actually tucked away in the back of a wardrobe. So they're not the easiest place to get to, and certainly not the easiest place for me to write on the labels. But what I have done, obviously, is marked up each of the fuses and the trip switches in a permanent marker so I can see them. But to actually label the individual ones with what they are, could be the upstairs light, could be the upstairs garden side lights, the upstairs driveway side lights, it could be all sorts of things. And obviously there's a lot of writing you can put on there. Now, if it's nice and easy, then I recommend that you do that. But for me, it's not so easy with all the way that it's split around the house. So I'm going to rely on having the numbers on the actual light fittings and on the plug sockets, because that way I know that as I go to something, I know which circuit it is. I can come in here, I can flick it off, I can do whatever I need to do, and then when I'm finished, I can flick it on. But obviously, you know, if it's easier for you to label them, then, you know, you should go ahead and do that. All right, so it's as simple as that. And, you know, at the end of the day, doing this, if you're doing it yourself, this could actually save your life to make sure everything's labelled. So be safe, label everything, and just be careful whenever you're playing with the electrics, all right? And as I said before, if you don't feel confident doing so, please, please, please get an electrician, get a professional to come and do the work for you. All right, thanks very much.